220 million years ago, this remote wilderness in British Columbia formed part of the North American coastline. In 1992, the largest marine reptile fossil ever found, an ichthyosaur, was discovered in a riverbank here. Now, a Canadian paleontologist is defying all odds to extract this prehistoric creature and reveal a new chapter in the history of our planet. It's early June, and Dr. Betsy Nicholls is heading deep into the heart of British Columbia. With the arrival of summer, she's on her way to the Sicannie Chief River to continue a fossil excavation that's now in its third year.
I've been interested in fossils since I was 6 years old, and I knew I was going to grow up and be a paleontologist. I love collecting fossils. I love seeing just a flash of the diversity of our life millions of years ago, and I guess I'm just very tenacious. It's a challenge, and I love challenges.
Betsy first heard about the giant ichthyosaur in 1992 at Canada's Royal Tyrrell Museum, where she's curator of marine reptiles.
This particular fossil was found by a gentleman called Kerry Vault. He was a archaeologist doing a survey, archaeological survey along the Sicannie Chief River. And he found these large bones sticking out of the riverbank and reported it to the Tyrrell Museum. It was 2 years later that I came up here with a crew to find it and have a look at it. And we're kind of overwhelmed at the size of it. It was just so big, I thought, geez, that can't be an ichthyosaur. You know, that's a whale or something at a time, you know. I didn't give serious thought to collecting it. I didn't forget it because it was being washed away by the river, and I thought, gee, wouldn't it be nice to salvage this? You know, it's being destroyed, but I thought it was really out of the question.
In 1997, Betsy and one of her colleagues received funding to study ichthyosaurs and decided to return to the Sicannie Chief River. What they discovered that summer was to start one of the most ambitious fossil excavations ever undertaken.
So in '97, we spent just a month there. It was a small-scale operation. And then we found the skull, and at that point we realized it was complete, and the magnitude of just how big it was sort of sunk in. 23 meters long, and 1.5 times bigger than any ichthyosaur that's been found before.
Betsy knew the fossil would have to be rescued to examine how this unique creature had grown so large. Its skeleton might cause a complete rethink about how marine reptiles lived in Earth's prehistory. Over the next 18 months, she raised the funds to begin digging and sought permission from the First Nations people on whose land the fossil was situated. But the biggest problems she faced were caused by the sheer isolation of the site, perching on a riverbank more than 2 kilometers from the nearest dirt track.
If you're going to collect any large skeleton like that, obviously you're going to have to dig a very big hole in the ground. And it's in very, very hard rock, so we couldn't just use picks and shovels. We had to use jackhammers. We realized we were going to have to get an air compressor in there and some pretty heavy equipment. Because it's in such a remote locality, we couldn't just drive them in. We had to get a helicopter to fly them all in.
It's the first day of this summer's digging, and all the heavy equipment, fuel and supplies are being airlifted into the excavation site. Last year, Betsy and her crew marked out a grid over the areas of rock that contained fossil. Her first task this year is to mark out where the rock can be cut into blocks without damaging the bones. Removing sections of rock is hard work and gives this remote riverbank the appearance of a building site. Once removed, blocks are taken by helicopter to the road before beginning the 1,200-kilometer journey by truck to the Royal Tyrrell Museum. Conditions here are tough. Despite the rugged beauty, the riverbank is plagued by mosquitoes, and there's a constant threat of attack by bears. Because of the isolation, the crew will change several times during the short summer. But Betsy will remain on site throughout. Meanwhile, back at the museum, work is already underway on the giant ichthyosaur's skull.
The most important part of any vertebrate fossil is the skull. We got it excavated last summer, and it turned out to be 5.8 meters long. That's almost 18 feet long, and that's huge. That's the same size as a blue whale skull, essentially. To get it out of the ground, we had to dig a very big hole. We had to break it into pieces. The largest piece, which has the brain case and the eye, that weighed 4.5 tons. The skull is being prepared by our technicians. This is very slow work. It's going to take several years. You have to mechanically drill all the rock away from the surface of the bone. You use a little tool called an air scribe, and it sort of just chips the rock away from the bone.
The skull will reveal vital information about this unique creature's diet and behavior. The Siccany chief ichthyosaur will then join the other prehistoric exhibits on display at the museum.
When the preparation is complete, we will mount it and put it on display. On the riverbank, it's hard to see because it's the same color as the rock. But once we've removed the rock all on one side, the bone will stand out much better. It will be done as a plaque mount, which means you'll see one side of the bone as it appeared in the ground. And then we'll do a three-dimensional reconstruction of the skull. It'll look pretty impressive. This is certainly my largest project, and I'm not sure I ever want to do one this large again because it's so large. Most of the work has been in organizing. But it's a very significant specimen, and I think it's really been worth all the effort. And it sort of rewrites the history of what we knew about Triassic ichthyosaurs. You know, we think we're so important. We think that the world is ours, but there's a huge world that we know nothing about.